You know what? Just 3 weeks ago, a 68-year-old gentleman walked into my office. His name is Don Armando, a man who spent his entire life working in construction here in Monterrey. One of those tough guys who never complains about anything. But that day, when he sat down in front of me, I saw something I hadn't seen in over 20 years as a doctor. I saw fear in his eyes. He told me, almost in a whisper, "Dr. Inés, nothing comes out anymore when, well, you know what I mean." And that's when I knew I had to share this with more people. If you're a man who's noticed that during climax, semen doesn't come out like it used to, or maybe nothing comes out at all, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What I'm about to tell you today could completely change your intimate life. Look, Don Armando told me he'd been living with this for almost 6 months. 6 months of bottling up the fear, not saying a word to his wife, thinking maybe he'd just passed the age for it, that this is how things are when you get old. "Why worry the doctor?" he said to me. And that's the problem, gentlemen. This silence that's killing us from the inside. Let me explain something really important to you. What Don Armando was experiencing is called retrograde ejaculation, or dry ejaculation. And before you think, "Oh, another complicated name I won't understand," I'm going to lay it out for you clearly, just like I did for him. Your body is still producing semen, you understand? The problem is that instead of coming out where it should, it's going the wrong way. It's going into your bladder. It's like when you have a street with 2 directions and suddenly someone flips all the signs around. Now, why does this happen? I'm going to tell you about 3 main causes I've seen in my office over the years, and I promise that by the end, you'll understand everything perfectly. The first cause is something that sounds complicated, but it's more common than you think. Look, many men over 60 have to have prostate surgery, right? It's normal. It happens to a lot of us. The catch is that those surgeries, especially the ones done with laser, can affect the muscles and nerves that control the direction of the semen. Remember Don Armando, the one I mentioned at the beginning? Well, it turns out he had prostate surgery 8 months ago, a modern green laser procedure. Everything went perfectly, he told me. The doctor had assured him he'd be like new in 3 months, and, in a way, he was. He could urinate without problems. He no longer woke up 5 times a night. Everything was working fine. But there was one detail no one had clearly warned him about. Ejaculation could change. "Doctor," Don Armando told me, "I thought I'd become, useless." And here's the important part, friends. When I asked if he still felt pleasure, if he still had orgasms, he said yes. "So, you're not useless, Don Armando," I replied. "Your body is functioning. It's just doing it differently." What Don Armando didn't know was that prostate surgeries, especially those with laser, can affect the internal bladder sphincter. And what's that? Imagine it's like a little door that normally closes during climax so the semen comes out where it should. But when that door gets damaged or weakened, the semen takes the easier path and goes into the bladder. I told Don Armando something I want you to hear loud and clear too. This doesn't mean you've lost your masculinity. It doesn't mean your intimate life is over. What it means is your body is working in a different way, and there are ways to manage it. The second main cause is medications. Oh, medications, those friends and enemies we older adults have. Let me tell you about Don Roberto, a 72-year-old gentleman who came to see me about 2 months ago. Don Roberto has been diabetic for 15 years. He has high blood pressure, high cholesterol, well, like many of us when we reach a certain age. No, Don Roberto came into my office pretty angry. "Dr. Inés," he said, "I've been taking these meds my cardiologist prescribed, and ever since, nothing works right down there." When I reviewed his medication list, it all made sense. He was taking a blood pressure med called tamsulosin. This medication is great for helping you urinate better, but it has a side effect. It relaxes that sphincter I mentioned earlier. But here's the interesting part. Pay attention because this is important. Don Roberto said, So I have to stop the medicine, doctor? Without it, I can't even go to the bathroom properly. And that's where our job as doctors comes in. It's not about stopping everything and letting things go however they go. It's about finding the right balance. I adjusted his dose, talked to his cardiologist, tweaked a few things. It wasn't overnight, but in 3 weeks, Don Roberto was already noticing changes. The semen was still coming out less than before, but at least there was something. And most importantly, he understood he wasn't broken. He just needed the right balance among his meds. There are other medications that can cause this too, gentlemen. Antidepressants, for example, meds for enlarged prostate, some allergy medications. And I'm not telling you to stop them, okay? Not at all. I'm telling you that if you're experiencing this, you need to talk to your doctor to see if there are alternatives or adjustments that can be made. Now comes the third cause, one that's really important because it affects a ton of men here in Mexico: diabetes. Uncontrolled diabetes can damage the nerves throughout your body, including the ones that control ejaculation. It's called diabetic neuropathy, and it's more common than you think. Let me tell you the story of Fernando, a 65-year-old man I met about 6 months ago. Fernando is from Guadalajara, but he came all the way to Monterrey specifically to see me because someone had recommended my office. This guy had been diabetic for almost 20 years, but never took good care of himself. "Oh, doctor," he said, "we're stubborn, aren't we? We think nothing's ever going to happen to us." Fernando told me that at first it was just a little less semen, then almost nothing, and finally, nothing at all. But what worried him most wasn't that. What worried him most was that he'd also lost sensitivity in other areas. His feet would go numb often. Sometimes he'd feel tingling in his hands. And during intimate acts, he'd lost a lot of sensitivity too. When I ran all his tests, I was honestly concerned. His blood sugar levels were through the roof. His A1C was at 10.5 when it should be under 7. I told him, "Fernando, we don't just have to work on your intimate life. We have to work on controlling your diabetes, because if we don't, this is only going to get worse, and you'll have even more serious problems." And here's the hopeful part, friends. Fernando got serious about it. He started really watching his diet, cut out sodas, excess tortillas, all those little treats we love so much. He began walking 30 minutes every day, took his meds religiously. And you know what? In 3 months, he was seeing changes. It didn't go back to how it was when he was 30, I won't lie to you, but it improved a lot. What these extraordinary cases like Fernando's show us is that a man's body is more resilient than we think. But it needs us to take care of it, to pay attention, to not ignore the signals it's sending. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, Dr. Inés, I get why it happens, but what do I do about it? How do I fix it? And this is where the good news comes in, because there are several things you can do. First and foremost, you have to go to your doctor. I know many men are really proud and feel embarrassed talking about these things, but understand this: your doctor has seen it all. Nothing's going to shock them. And the sooner you identify the cause, the sooner you can do something about it. When you go to your doctor, they'll check several things. First, your urine. Did you know that after ejaculating, if you have retrograde ejaculation, your urine will look different? If it's cloudier or milky, that's because the semen your body produced is in there. It just took the wrong path. It's like a clue telling us what's happening. They'll also review your current medications, do tests on your prostate, your testosterone levels, your blood sugar if you're diabetic. All of this to get the full picture. And here's something many people don't know. There are medications that can help. There's a med called imipramine that can help strengthen that sphincter I've been talking about. It doesn't work for everyone, but for some men, it makes a big difference. There are also others like pseudoephedrine that can help in certain cases. But it's not all about meds, gentlemen. There are exercises you can do. They're called Kegel exercises, and they're not just for women like many people think. These strengthen the pelvic floor muscles, the ones that control both urination and ejaculation. How do you do them? It's simple. Next time you're urinating, try stopping the stream halfway. Those muscles you used to stop it, those are the ones you need to exercise. Do them when you're not urinating. Contract those muscles, count to 5, relax, and repeat. Do 10 reps 3 times a day. It's like going to the gym, but without leaving home. Don Armando, that gentleman I told you about at the beginning, started doing these exercises religiously. He called me about 6 weeks later and said, "Dr. Inés, I don't know if it's my imagination, but I think it's improving." And it wasn't his imagination. The muscles were getting stronger, and though he still had retrograde ejaculation, it wasn't as severe as at the start. Now here's something that's almost never talked about but is super important. Communication with your partner. Many men keep this to themselves because they're ashamed, because they think their wife will think less of them. But let me tell you something I've learned in over 20 years of treating couples. Women are much more understanding than you think. When Don Armando finally talked to his wife, do you know what happened? She started crying, but not from sadness or disappointment, from relief. Armando told her, "I thought you didn't desire me anymore, that you'd found someone younger." All this time, she'd been making up her own stories in her head, when the reality was completely different. And this is something I see all the time in my office. Couples drift apart not because there's a problem, but because they don't talk about the problem. Intimacy isn't just physical, gentlemen. It's emotional, it's communication, it's connection. And when there's that connection, when there's open communication, physical problems become much more manageable. Let's also talk about something important: changes in lifestyle. I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but it's true. What you eat, how you move, if you smoke or drink excessively, all of that affects your sexual health. Fernando, the diabetic gentleman I told you about, said something really great when he came back after 3 months. He said, "Dr. Inés, I used to think eating healthy and exercising was nonsense, but now that I'm doing it, I realize everything's connected. I control my sugar, I feel better, I have more energy, and yes, it improves things down there too." And he's right. The body is like an orchestra. When all the instruments are in tune, when the conductor is focused, the music sounds beautiful. But when one instrument is off key, when the conductor is distracted, everything sounds wrong. Your heart needs to be healthy, so blood flows properly everywhere. Your nerves need to be healthy, so signals transmit correctly. Your hormones need to be balanced so everything works as it should. And all that comes from good habits: eating well, moving, sleeping enough, managing stress. Speaking of hormones, many men ask me about testosterone. "Dr. Inés, do I need testosterone?" And the answer is, it depends. Not all men with retrograde ejaculation have low testosterone, but if you do, it could definitely be contributing to the problem. Testosterone can be measured with a simple blood test. If it's low, there are treatments available. But, and this is important, testosterone isn't a magic pill that fixes everything. It's part of an overall treatment that includes everything else we've been talking about. Now, let me tell you something that's almost never mentioned. There are cases where retrograde ejaculation doesn't have a complete cure, and that's okay. Not everything in medicine has a perfect solution, but that doesn't mean your intimate life is over. Don Roberto, the medication guy, still has retrograde ejaculation. We adjusted his meds as best we could, but we couldn't eliminate it completely without compromising his heart health. And you know what? He learned to live with it. He told me in his last visit, "Doctor, at first it really pissed me off, but then I realized the important thing isn't how much comes out. The important thing is that I can still enjoy time with my wife, that I still feel pleasure, that I still have that connection with her. And that's what I want you to understand, sir. Masculinity isn't measured by the amount of semen you produce. It's not measured by how long you last, or any of those superficial things society has drilled into our heads. True masculinity is in how you face problems, how you care for yourself and your partner, how you adapt to the changes life brings. I've seen men who function perfectly physically but are terrible partners. And I've seen men with all kinds of health issues who are excellent husbands, fathers, friends. Which do you think is more valuable? I want you to know something else. If you're experiencing this, you're not alone. Studies show that 20 to 30% of men over 60 experience some degree of retrograde ejaculation. That means if you gather 10 guys your age, probably 2 or 3 are going through the same thing. But no one talks about it because we've been taught these things are shameful, taboo topics. Well, enough of that. Enough silence, enough suffering in secret. This is something that can be talked about, treated, managed. And the more men who speak up, the easier it will be for everyone else. I also want you to know this doesn't affect your fertility in all cases. If you're at an age where you're still thinking about having kids, there are options. The semen is still there. It's just taking another route. There are medical procedures that can retrieve that semen from the bladder for fertility treatments. It's not ideal, of course, but the option exists. Let me tell you one more thing about Don Armando. About 4 months after his first visit, he came back to see me. But this time, with his wife, Doña Carmen. They both looked different, more relaxed, happier. They told me they'd started couples therapy. Not because they had major problems, but because they wanted to strengthen their communication. Dr. Inés, Doña Carmen said, I tell all my friends that if their husband is going through something like this, they should talk, not be afraid, because intimacy is so much more than the physical. It's trust, it's affection, it's being there for each other. And Don Armando just nodded, holding her hand. That's what I want for you. I want you to have that peace, that tranquility of knowing you're not facing this alone, that there are solutions, support, hope. So, what do you do if something I said today resonates with you? First, take a deep breath. It's not the end of the world. Second, make an appointment with your doctor. Note down when the changes started, what medications you're taking, any other symptoms you've noticed. The more info you have, the better. Third, talk to your partner. I know it's scary. I know it's uncomfortable. But I promise the relief you'll feel afterward is worth every second of awkwardness. And fourth, be patient with yourself. Changes won't happen overnight, but with the right treatment, the correct lifestyle changes, and your partner's support, things can improve a lot. And if after all this, you discover retrograde ejaculation is here to stay, remember what I said. It doesn't define who you are. It doesn't define your value as a man, as a partner, as a person. What defines you is how you face life's challenges. Look, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've seen it all. I've seen men destroyed by things much smaller than this, and I've seen men thrive despite much graver problems. What's the difference? Attitude. The willingness to seek help, the courage to talk about what's happening. Men like Don Armando, Don Roberto, Fernando, they're not superheroes. They're regular guys who decided not to stay quiet, who chose to seek solutions instead of resigning themselves. And they've all told me the same thing. I wish I'd come sooner. I wish I hadn't kept this to myself for so long. Don't be like them in that. Don't wait months or years for help. The sooner you act, the more options you'll have. Medicine advances every day. New treatments, new procedures, new research, but none of it will help if you don't take the first step. And the first step is acknowledging there's something to address, accepting you need help, understanding that asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. It makes you brave. Because it takes more courage to admit something's wrong than to keep pretending everything's fine. So if you're watching this and felt identified, I want you to know I'm here to help you. My office is open to you. And if you can't come see me, find a trusted doctor in your city, someone you can talk to openly. Don't let fear or shame rob you of years of happiness. Don't let silence destroy your relationship with your partner. Don't let ignorance make you think this is normal and there's nothing to do. Because there is something to do. There's always something to do. And remember this, turning 60, 70, 80 doesn't mean your intimate life is over. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy your partner anymore. It doesn't mean you've lost your masculinity. What it means is you're in a new stage of life, one with its own challenges, but also its own rewards. I've seen 80-year-old couples with more satisfying, intimate lives than 30-year-olds. Why? Because they've learned to communicate, because they know each other deeply, because they understand intimacy goes far beyond the physical. So go ahead, sir. Take that first step. Make that call. Book that appointment. Talk to your partner. Start those exercises. Change those habits. Do what you have to do, but do it because you deserve it. You deserve to feel good. You deserve a satisfying, intimate life. You deserve to be happy. And if anything I said today helped you, if it made you feel less alone, if it gave you hope, then my job is done. Because that's what I want. No man should feel alone in this. Everyone should know help is available. Solutions exist. Hope is real. Take care of yourself. And remember, health comes first, but happiness matters too. And you can have both.